Hey everyone, I'm the Canadian Lad, and I just watched What If episode 7 at 0.25x speed. Well, this episode was a little bit different, and didn't have the dark or evil tone to it. In fact, when we thought we were meeting the villain, we got a brother from another mother instead. I'm gonna break it down scene by scene, and if any scenes happen to have an Easter egg, or a detail that I caught in slow motion, I'll explain that along the way. But before I begin, please spare me 34 seconds to thank today's sponsor, Ridge Wallet. I've been using Ridge Wallet for about a year now, and I can honestly say it's impossible to go back to old wallets. They're super slender and don't bulk up your pockets like other wallets can, and they're extremely durable and come with a lifetime warranty. Most importantly for me, they're made with RFID blocking technology, which protects you from digital pickpocketers. Best of all, they come in 30 colors and styles, so you're sure to find one that suits you. And if you're not satisfied after 45 days, they'll even send you a refund. That's how confident they are in their product. So click on my link in the description and use my code CanadianLad to get 10% off your purchase. For this episode, Chris Hemsworth, Natalie Portman, Tom Hiddleston, Kat Dennings, Jeff Goldblum, and Taika Waititi all come back to reprise their previous roles. This episode asks the question, what if Thor were an only child? Meaning the event that set the motion for Thor to become one of the greatest superheroes of all time doesn't even exist in this universe. In the sacred timeline, it's only after Thor gets banished by his father and loses all of his powers that's when he learns the biggest lesson of his life. But in this universe, that never happens. So basically, this over-the-top upbeat Thor that we've seen at the beginning of Thor 1 is what we get for the entirety of this episode. It opens exactly the way we've seen in live action, with Jane and Darcy waiting on a van observing an anomaly. They then hear their laptop beeping, which ensures Jane is right. An alien is on his way to Earth, aka Midgard. And notice on Jane's laptop, we can actually see a real-life model of Van Allen belts. Van Allen belts are an invisible magnetic force field surrounding our planet, protecting us from harmful solar wind that could potentially annihilate Earth. So to be able to see this in an animated show, where they could basically show us anything and get away with it, but Marvel still made sure to show us accurate scientific details. Jane is trying to reach the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. aka Nick Fury, but they of course don't listen to her, thinking she is bluffing. We then see Thor arriving in Midgard, specifically Las Vegas, along with the Warriors 3 and Lady Sif. But unlike any other alien invasion, this one is really different. You notice one of the bystanders is wearing a pineapple t-shirt. This could be a nod to Taika Waititi's Korg from Avengers Endgame, where he wore a similar sort of t-shirt. The Watcher then explains what really went different in this universe. He tells us how things panned out in the main timeline versus this one. But notice as he starts to talk about the main timeline, he physically turns his head and looks in the opposite direction, meaning surrounding him is the multiverse, and wherever he looks, he sees a different timeline, and for that, he had to physically shift his view. Now, while the Watcher explains how things unfold in the main timeline, we discover that Kid Loki once used the casket of ancient winters to playfully freeze his brother Thor. This is of course the same casket through which Loki finds out his true identity in the main timeline. We learn that in this universe, Odin returned baby Loki to his actual parents, and that's how Thor never got the character arc he would have gotten otherwise. Odin then falls into his Odin sleep, and Mother Frigga takes off to enjoy some time with her sister. And I like how even Odin needed 3 handmaids to sing in the background in order for him to fall asleep. We of course saw something similar in Thor Ragnarok. And notice the way Thor is sitting here with his legs crossed. Even at a moment where his father is essentially going to sleep for almost 1,000 years, he didn't forget to sit in style. This small detail establishes that for this version of Thor, style and charisma are all that matter. So with Odin and Frigga both gone, Thor is left alone to fill his father's shoes. But as he doesn't have that much experience about how everything works, Frigga tells him to study the 9 realms and learn while she gets back. And she specifically says,
"No parties."
Of course, Mother.
Thor saying of course here gave me the same vibe as this one.
Of course.
Now what Thor plans on doing is partying, but how can he do that when Heimdall is almost always keeping an eye on him? So he decides to go to a planet so backwards that even Heimdall wouldn't even bother looking. And that planet is of course Midgard. Now while they were walking inside Odin's treasure room, in the background we can see an infinity gauntlet. In the main timeline it was debunked by Hela, who said this is a fake gauntlet. Cut to Midgard where the party is going on exactly the way every comic book fan would imagine. We again see the guy with the pineapple t-shirt now partying with Lady Sif. Now this beer stein in Lady Sif's hand looks different than the other two. It's because she brought this all the way back from Asgard. Not only her, even the Warriors 3 and Thor himself have all brought their glasses along with them. That's why everyone else has regular looking mugs while theirs look different. But listen to what Thor says.
It never runs out. You try to drink it all, but you can't because it's magic.
Well, some may think this is a reference to Doctor Strange, who offered Thor a never-ending drink, but keep in mind Stephen Strange is yet to meet the Ancient One in this timeline, so this couldn't be a reference to Doctor Strange. So why did Thor say it then? Well, because because his beer glasses from Asgard probably have magical abilities that always refills a drink before it ends. And that's the reason they were brought here in the first place. Now in this shot we can also spot Yondu, but can only see him from the back. Jane then figures out the first extraterrestrial to arrive on Earth was Thor, who we see in slow motion flipping his hair with a big smile on his face, and this immediately makes Jane fall head over heels for Thor. And here we're introduced to Howard the Duck, once again played by Seth Green. He's here probably because in this universe, the Collector didn't put him in a cage. We see Thor having a laugh with Skrulls, who he commands to copy his look. While some may get intimidated by this, but this Thor enjoys it. It's because all he can think about is himself. And then we get this joke at the expense of Natalie Portman's height.
Yes? Huh? Oh, there you are, all the way down there. So tiny, I almost stood on you.
Thor offers Jane some food, and there we meet the Grandmaster for the first time in this series. And he's not alone, he has his bodyguard Topaz by his side, who's carrying the melt stick that he uses to literally melt criminals. Jane then asks Thor if he's the Norse god of thunder, but Thor, who never even heard the word Norse, says this.
I don't know anything about horse gods, but I don't know how to bring the thunder.
This shows why Mother Frigga asked him to study the 9 realms. That way he would have learned how he's known to people in Midgard. And just like Jane was all over Thor, now it's Thor himself who finds Jane extremely pretty and even compliments her intelligence.
Your eyes. Do all geniuses have such deep, dark eyes? It's like watching the birth of 2 stars on the edge of the galaxy.
Then we see Thor, Jane, and almost everyone party like there's no tomorrow. And we get our very own MCU Grandmaster who shows his passion for spinning records. And if you watch it in slow motion, you'll notice how Thor was also spinning his hammer while dancing. We then see Nebula is playing dice, and she's playing to win an eye. So in this universe, she received the same sort of treatment as in the main timeline. I just wonder how would this version of Thor react if he sees this version of Nebula in front of him. We get some more cameos from Valkyrie and Drax. And somehow we end up with Darcy marrying Howard the Duck in Vegas. I mean, Howard my dude has been maintaining some level since 1986. You notice this Elvis impersonator officiating this wedding. He looks awfully similar to Kurt Russell, wouldn't you think? I mean, the resemblance is very unlikely to be coincidental, given the fact that Kurt Russell is also an MCU actor, who played Ego, Peter Quill's father, in Guardians Volume 2. Thor and Jane then both decide to get tattoos on their arms, with Thor deciding to go for science and Jane picking up Thor's hammer. Now notice how smooth Thor's tattoo is compared to Jane's. Jane is almost bleeding and got some blisters. Another small detail showcasing their different levels of pain tolerance. Now I thought Thor may have threatened the people inside the tattoo shop to get these tattoos, but it seems as though this particular shop is giving out discounts if you're a couple. And if this Jane is anything like we've seen in live action, then you know that she isn't that financially well off. So maybe they both got tattoos together because that way they could get the couple discount. Cut to the next morning where everyone is suffering from a hangover. Now because Jane tried to warn S.H.I.E.L.D. at the beginning of the episode, S.H.I.E.L.D. has now come to Jane to investigate more. We see Rocket Raccoon sleeping on a sink, and notice they even managed to break the mirror above the sink. Now Thor again calls him a rabbit.
Guys, look, there's a cute little rabbit in the sink. Oh, look at this little rabbit.
In Avengers Infinity War, Thor also mistook Rocket for a rabbit.
The rabbit is correct and clearly the smartest among you.
We see Maria Hill as acting director of S.H.I.E.L.D., as Nick Fury was taken out by Korg while he was attempting a ball cannon. Now listen carefully what Nick Fury says as Korg rams into him. I've tried to listen to it multiple times, and I think he says I mean, of course he doesn't finish the word, but this could be a nod to the end of Infinity War where Sam Jackson said the exact same thing. Now, as the acting director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Maria Hill decides to page Captain Marvel, and over here Thor is again partying, but now in Paris. Then we see Thor taking selfies with Aisha, aka the Golden High Priestess from Guardians Volume 2. Then enters Loki, who was raised as the Prince of Jotunheim. I really forgot that Loki is actually supposed to be of this size, considering his people are literally called Frost Giants. I think the reason I forgot is because even in the Loki series, where we got to see a variant Frost Giant Loki, he was in his regular size as well. So it never really crossed my mind that had Loki remained in Jotunheim, he would have had the same size as other Frost Giants. Kudos to the writers and director for getting this right this time. Now I absolutely love how Loki addresses Thor in their first meeting in this episode.
Where's that son of a witch, Thor Odin's son?
He could have just simply said Thor Odin's son, but he also says son of a witch. This does have a deeper meaning if you think about it. I mean, in the Prime timeline, Frigga is the one who taught Loki magic, and is one of the only Asgardians who truly loved Loki, and vice versa. This version of Loki is bulky AF, as he is the only one who has proper six-pack abs here, and still dons the bandy horns of his from the comics. And notice, even though this Loki is huge, but this Frost Giants behind him are even bigger than him in size, probably because this Loki is still young. Speaking of which, notice how director Brian Andrews put all the characters in the shot from small to large in terms of their height, if you look at them from left to right. We then learn that despite growing up in two different worlds, Loki and Thor still consider each other as brothers from another mother, so it seems as though their brotherhood across the multiverse is so significant that even if they're worlds apart, their paths will eventually cross. We then hear a sonic boom as Captain Marvel arrives on Earth. Now, out of all the crazy things that we see in this episode, having the names of countries such as France and Belgium engraved on Earth was the moment I lost it. I don't know why, but I think this was the funniest thing in this episode. Straight out of Looney Tunes, eh? But yes, this wasn't just for comedic relief though. It keeps your focus on the story, and you know at all times where the story is taking place. Captain Marvel then asks Thor to clean up the mess and leave the planet immediately, but he of course refuses, which results in this fight. Thor calls Captain Marvel a party pooper, which a lot of people would agree with for a lot of reasons. Now in this fight, Captain Marvel does end up getting hit by Mjolnir, which again establishes the fact that things are indeed different in this universe, because in this universe Thor hasn't fully grown yet. So Captain Marvel probably didn't know that his hammer can make a full stop and come back to him anytime he wants, which Thor calls the hammerang technique. Now as the fight intensifies, Loki says this.
Here we go. Here we go.
It shows his excitement, how he's counting on Thor to win. Reminds me how Loki smiled in Thor Ragnarok when Thor reached his absolute peak. Now Thor was spinning his hammer so fast that it became difficult for bystanders to hold their ground. In fact, this particular bystander, who looks to be a teenager, got tossed around so badly that it took out another bystander while falling on the ground. Thor and Captain Marvel go toe to toe and we end up in Stonehenge. Now this place isn't new to the MCU, as Eric Selvig got apprehended from here in Thor the Dark World. Now Thor ends up tapping one of the stones, and as it falls, it creates the domino effect. Now I have a theory here, which is probably a reach, but please hear me out. Thor tapping on one of the stones sets off a chain reaction, which causes destruction to a historic place. This could be a metaphor for how one single event could set off a chain reaction that has a huge impact by the end. This is what it's all been leading up to. All of the 7 episodes are like tapping the stones, and the 9th episode is going to show us the final impact. The fight continues as we now move to another continent. Now notice how fast Captain Marvel is. She punches Thor to another continent, and while he's still mid-air, she punches him again on their descent. We get some epic hand-to-hand combat in the scene. Now, because of how quickly everything happens here, I had to go even slower than 0.2 Febic speed. So at the beginning of this fight, Captain Marvel gets all charged up and goes binary, but then Thor manages to hit her first. As a result, she loses her binary form. As you can see, her eyes are not glowing anymore, but in the very next frame, she transforms into her binary form once again. Now it's not important who is more powerful here. What's important is the fact that all of the things that I just told you happened in less than a second. And the next detail is even more fascinating. We know that Thor uses his lightning powers while fighting, which is mostly bluish in color, and Captain Marvel's kinda yellow or golden. Now notice in this fight, whenever an impact is made, Captain Marvel's energy runs towards Thor, while Thor's lightning goes towards Captain Marvel. And when it's only Thor striking at Captain Marvel, we only see lightning and no energy coming off of her. This sort of accuracy is why I love watching Marvel content in slow motion. Trust me, it happens so fast in real time that nobody would bother in a million years if Marvel hadn't put these details in. But Marvel still does, and that's what I appreciate. Thor then hits her with a lightning blast, but it makes no impact. It actually surprises Thor, because just like Captain Marvel wasn't fully aware of his powers, he isn't fully aware of hers either. One of the main powers of Captain Marvel is energy absorption. She will absorb as long as you want and then unleash it whenever necessary. Thor then finally gets the upper hand as he uses the Mjolnir to pin her down. He did it in Thor 1, and we have always wondered why he didn't do this in Endgame. And I'm so glad he used his worthiness to come out on top against Captain Marvel, because no matter how powerful she is, as long as she isn't worthy, Thor will always have the upper hand. Cut to Maria Hill, who is now furious with Captain Marvel, because Maria was told one punch of Carol Danvers is equal to 10 nuclear bombs. But she's standing here after getting defeated by a weak Thor. Darcy then says she's a big fan of Captain Marvel.
Who are you?
Darcy, big fan.
She said something similar in live action as well.
Monica, I know, big fan.
Carol Danvers then says if she really uses her full powers, it could kill a whole lot of people with Thor, and that won't be a smart move. So they come up with a new plan. They will lure Thor to Siberia and attack him with the intention to kill. Jane, who is in love with Thor, disagrees with the plan, but Maria Hill says her assistance is no longer required, so Jane and Darcy both get dropped from the mission. Jane then tries to reach Thor over the phone, but Loki picks up the call. Now Frost Giant Loki is so massive that a regular-sized cell phone is just as small as the tip of his fingers. Because he couldn't get a proper grip, he drops the cell phone. And that's a challenge for you, Apple. Try making an iPhone that will survive a drop test if it was conducted by Frost Giant Loki. We then meet Surtur for the first time since Thor Ragnarok, and the best part about him is Clancy Brown actually came back to reprise his role. Now a lot of people are theorizing that this version of Surtur is good. Well, I don't think so. I think this version of Surtur is still destined to cause Ragnarok. Ragnarok didn't happen because Odin adopted Loki or because Hela went rogue. Ragnarok at the hands of Surtur was prophesied well before all of that in the comics. So yeah, I think Ragnarok Ragnarok is still inevitable in this universe. If anything, it's even easier now. Maybe Thor will one day party so hard in Asgard that will lead to the destruction of the planet. And I absolutely loved how Surtur literally melted the right arm of the Statue of Liberty. Now the Harbour Bridge in Sydney has been turned into a dance floor, and over here we see Mantis for the first time. Cut to Thor, who is about to slide down the Opera House, but is interrupted mid-flight by Captain Marvel, and they again end up fighting each other. But luckily Jane calls upon Heimdall. He brings her to Asgard and discovers Thor's life is in danger, so he immediately teleports Jane to Frigga. Now over here Maria Hill is preparing to nuke both Thor and Captain Marvel. When asked why Captain Marvel, she says because she can withstand it. And notice as soon as Frigga appears before Thor, his facial expression changes almost instantaneously, whereas Captain Marvel doesn't even flinch. Thor lies to his mother, saying he came to Midgard to study the 9 realms, and his mother doesn't believe him, so she cuts her trip short and is on her way to Midgard. So now instead of fighting Captain Marvel, he now begs her to help him restore this planet as it was before. After seeing this, Maria Hill decides to put a hold on the nukes, but Ramlo, aka Crossbones, seemed pretty eager to fire the nukes, mostly because he's a Hydra agent, which S.H.I.E.L.D. is full of at this point in the timeline. Thor then comes back to the Harbour Bridge and convinces everyone to stop the party and clean up after themselves, and then begins the damage control, starting with the Stonehenge fixing the power to the city, and Surtur takes it upon himself to fix the broken arm of the Statue of Liberty. Now while fixing all of their mess, I like how Thor overdoes it again and literally corrects the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Now it could be because of Thor's lack of knowledge, or this was an intentional nod to Superman 3, in which evil Superman commits multiple atrocities just to piss everyone off. Now all of this really make me think just how long the Bifrost journey is. I mean, so far we've seen them travel through the Bifrost almost instantly, but this time it took ages for Frigga to arrive on Earth. I mean, how convenient. I guess we needed that for the dramatic reveal where Frigga finally arrives on Earth and finds Thor starting with his group. You notice when everyone greets Frigga by saying hello Mother Frigga, we can clearly see Thor's lips are moving as well.
Everyone say hello to Mother.
So he's literally instructing them what to say, but Frigga, being a witch, can still sense something suspicious. Captain Marvel arrives, who helps Thor maintain the illusion, but not for long as Thor eventually gets caught when he summons Mjolnir and it comes back in this condition. Thor then finally asks out Jane on a date, and we were on the verge of getting a happy ending until Ultron arrives with his army through a portal. Now this Ultron is from a different timeline, where he defeated the Avengers and successfully uploaded his consciousness into Vision's vibranium body. Not only that, he also possesses all of the 6 Infinity Stones, with the Mind Stone and the Time Stone being in the center, indicating they hold much more significance compared to the rest of the stones. Now what's interesting here is that even the Watcher was caught off guard, so he may still be under the impression that the multiverse do not entangle with each other, and that's why seeing Supreme Leader Ultron coming to conquer this world took the Watcher by surprise. And notice how Ultron's entire suit works as a gauntlet, enabling him to use the stones with more freedom. So Ultron, trying to one-up his creator Tony Stark, remained the same here. I guess this is it. The next 2 episodes could see an endgame level crossover, with the final episode being titled Infinite Ultron. And that's it. This would be my breakdown of What If episode 7 at 0.2 Febic speed. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video, grab the subscribe button and turn notifications on. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter to get updates about my videos. Till then, I'll see you lads in the next one.